Like I feel that I'm a completely different person now. I feel more relaxed, more free, more, like aligned with my true self. I put him on the keto diet. He normalized his blood sugar. He went off the medication that he was taking for blood sugar and also other medications that he was taking for pain and for blood pressure. And he lost 13 kilos. We don't do things just because. We do things because we believe in those things. And I think that awareness and that belief comes from having the knowledge about it. Why do you have a headache? Is this because you are not properly hydrated? Is this because you are not having the proper amount of sleep? Is this because you have inflammation in your body because of the food that you eat? And then it all goes back to our lifestyle, like the way that we live and even like our environment. So like if we keep living like this for a few years more, then it will be irreversible. There will be no way back. So we need to make this change now.
This is Surfer of Life. Today I'm delighted to introduce my guest, PhD in Biochemistry, Evguenia Alechine. Besides being a doctor of biochemistry, you are now a science communicator, biohacker, yoga and acroyoga teacher, travel scientist, and sustainability advocate. Recently, you've been selected to be part of a leadership initiative for women in science who will collaborate to address climate change and save our planet. As part of this program, you're going to Antarctica in November with 100 female leaders. Your grand mission is to make the world a better and healthier place for us and future generations. Evguenia, welcome to Surfer of Life.
Thank you, Tommy. Quite an ambitious mission, right?
Yeah.
Like now that I hear you saying it, it's like, oh, wow.
So what a great mission. You also consider yourself a little bit as a surfer of life. Tell me more about that.
Well, it's kind of like I've always enjoyed challenges, and I always like to kind of like push myself outside of the comfort zone, whether it will be like, I don't know, doing Wim Hof method, for example, or like going to India for a yoga teacher training, or doing a Vipassana meditation retreat or something like that, or just like traveling the world as a digital nomad. Like I never was like the person who would fit the box. So like I was always wanted to be outside the box. So kind of like, yeah, I'm really, really bad at actual surfing. I did it twice. And I think for the sake of everyone's health and well-being, I don't have to do it again. But in terms of like, surfing life, I've had my challenges through life, so I can consider myself a skillful surfer.
Yeah, and that's the whole case. I can't surf at all either. I am on board, on snowboard and wakeboard and stuff like that, but surfing not. It's a surfer of life, as you said it.
Yeah.
You really are actually all over the place. Now you are in Prague, and soon you're going to be in London and then in Iceland. What took you to Prague?
Well, actually, I have some colleagues visiting, like some scientists coming to Prague. So I was here hosting them. And I've actually been living here for 10 months, the last year and a half. And this has been like my home base for some time. And then I'm going to London for the Health Optimization Summit, which I'm part of the organization team. I'm super excited, like when it's coming, it's like less than 24 hours, it will start. And and then Iceland, it's also like an amazing immersive experience, kind of like bringing together remote working and biohacking. So it's kind of like it's my dream life and my dream job and my dream everything. I really cannot complain.
Doesn't sound bad at all. You really
No.
are all over the place and you do so many different things in your life. I want to know more about acroyoga. Yoga is familiar, but what about acroyoga?
Well, acroyoga is not something that you know about. It's actually something that you try. So just keep in mind that next time that we meet in person, we will just practice it. But basically, its origins, it has kind of like three pillars. It's yoga, it's acrobatics, and it's Thai massage, which at first it doesn't look like anything to do with the other, but it's all about partner yoga. And you do some acrobatic stuff. They can be like more or less kind of like difficult, and there is also kind of like a therapeutic part of acroyoga, which has to do a lot with Thai massage. So it's so diverse, and it works so much with communication and connection between the people, and it's such a great community. For me, like when I started it, it was like almost like therapy, you know, like just go in there and you are like in the present moment. There is no way you're not in the present moment when you're doing acroyoga.
Sounds very interesting. I really didn't know anything about it. Thanks for clearing this up. How did you end up being one, a teacher?
Well, I've been practicing for the past, I don't know, I think like almost like 5 years, maybe more. And at some point, kind of like I always wanted to do a teacher training, but it was like never, you know, like the right time, the right place. And last year when I started, 2017, when I started traveling, I ended up being in Thailand, and there was a teaching training in Bali, which was pretty close for my standards because I was coming from the other side of the world. And then I was like, okay, now I feel the calling. Now I feel that this is something that I want to do. And it was like this kind of like immersive experience. I actually didn't know that I wanted to be a teacher when I went there. I was just like, it was an experience for me to kind of like advance my training and go deeper in the practice. But then, you know, like when they teach you to teach and you start teaching even like your colleagues, you're like, oh, wow, this is so rewarding. So it's amazing. I love it.
Do you follow your intuition in your life?
I do. But I have to admit that this has been quite a recent thing probably since that time where I started traveling, probably a little bit before, because that was also the reason that made me kind of like leave my hometown and just, you know, like become this traveler scientist and digital nomad. But yeah, you know, like I used to be very stubborn and very kind of like a control freak at some point of my life, like almost like during my whole life. And then especially, you know, like being a scientist, you have to be like super structured and everything under control. And yeah, like with time and kind of like things that happened in my life, you know, like I started to let go and release some things and to connect more with myself. And that was like also kind of like, I don't know what's the, you know, like the egg of the hen or the hen, but like also like the biohacking and the yoga and the acroyoga and the traveling, they were like always reinforcing this intuition inside of me.
You worked as a scientist for 8 years and then you made the total turnover in your life. Can you tell me more about this transformational time in your life? What really happened?
Do you want to know the truth?
Yeah, of course.
No, so the thing was, I've been, since I started my studies in biochemistry, and then I did a master's in biomedical sciences, then I did my PhD, I never stopped to think if that was my calling, if that was my mission in life. So I was like, okay, this is next. Let's not think too much about it. And same happened in my personal life. So I had, you know, like a perfectly fine relationship, you know, kind of like this plans for getting married, have kids, dog, house, everything, the whole package. And so I had like, during 3 years, I had 3 big crises. So like the first one was when I left my job. And I was like, I first left academia and I went for a job in industry. And then that didn't work out. And at some point I was like, okay, academia is not for me. Industry is not for me. So what am I good at and what I actually want to do? So that was the first time in my life that I stopped to think what I actually wanted to do. And that's where like the science communications started to kind of like take some shape and some presence in my life. Exactly 1 year after that, I was already kind of like, like right on track in my professional career. Then I had like a big breakup in my relationship. And then I was like, okay, so I'm not attached to a full-time 9-to-5 job. I'm not attached to a relationship, but I was still attached to my home, my city, my people, like my habits. And it took me another year and kind of like starting to talk to people and meet people along the way to say, what am I doing here? Like, I'm totally free. I can be wherever I want, doing this job that I actually love. And I can travel the world because this is what I enjoy doing. But I'm kind of like, I'm keeping myself trapped in this, like comfort zone that was, well, my home, my city. And then I think it was like just one day that I woke up. I looked at myself, like because I was working at home, I had this routine where I would wake up and stay in my pajamas, and then it will be like 9 p.m. and I will still be in my pajamas, still working, probably like eating like takeaway food. And I was like, oh my God, like I don't want to be this person. And then it kind of like, it was that aha moment, like something clicked. And I told to myself, I can just do whatever. I need to feel free. So that was the point in my life where I just, like gave up my apartment, stored all my things in a 2x2 storage room and bought a one-way ticket. And I think like that's where my real life started, like that's where my connection with myself and what I really wanted to do started.
How did it feel to leave everything behind? Eventually, you told me it took a year to kind of figure this out. How did it feel eventually when you did it?
Like it's an amazing feeling. It's a totally amazing feeling. And I actually felt it more when I made the decision than when I actually, like put my foot on the plane and left, like at that moment where I said like, yes, I'm doing this. Like the moment when I bought my ticket or when I, like signed the contract for my apartment, like that was the moment where I said like, okay, I'm letting this go. Like I don't know what will happen. I had no idea because at that time I had a full-time but remote job that I could do anywhere. But I didn't know if that will work forever for me. Like maybe I will be somewhere in Asia, jobless and, like without but then I was like, okay, I could always go back home, if I feel like it. But actually pretty much never wanted to go back, at least to my normal life as I know it. Like I feel that I'm a completely different person now. I feel more relaxed, more free, more, like aligned with my true self.
Have you experienced that afterwards? Because for me, if I'm able to let go of something, then really the magic starts to happen. When you stick onto something and you're not able to let go, but finally when you are really able to let go of things, then they really start to happen. Have you experienced this after that transformational time as well?
Yeah, like as I was saying before, like I used to be this control freak, And I was always, like if something wasn't going the way I wanted it to be, I would always force it and force it and force it. And every time that I forced it, it was never, like a happy ending, like at least for me, something, it was not what was supposed to be. And on the other hand, if when I'm able to let go, and I have to be honest, I'm not always able to let go. Even now, like there are some things that are still hard for me, but others, like this an attachment, especially, like to this material things, to like friends and family will always be there. Your home country, your hometown will always be there. And you can always go back to your previous life, your old life. But like the truth is that you don't want to go back there.
No, you actually don't. I totally agree on that. Let's travel further back in time. Let's take this time machine and go to the time when you were young, because you are a biohacker, but you've been really introduced to biohacking in early age already. Your family. Tell me a little bit about your family.
Oh, yeah, you know so much about me. Yeah, it's actually, I come from a Russian family. I was born in Russia and I lived there the first years of my life. And then since I'm 5 years old, I've been living in Argentina. But if I actually go back in time, so like, for example, one of my first experiences with yoga was when I was around 3 years old, because I was born with a lot of health problems. And my dad, and he is an engineer, he has nothing to do with this biohacking or natural world, but then he didn't know what to do with me. And he found this, I think it was a news article about the health benefits of yoga. And then he started to practice some breathing exercises with me when I was like literally 3-4 years old. And that was the only thing that helped me. And at some point, like when I was 11, I had one of my first meditation, hypnosis, macrobiotic diet experiences. And because of my family, and then when I started to know about this field of biohacking, we actually realized that, for example, my grandma, she had, and don't tell anyone, I don't know how legal is this, but she used to have like cannabis plantations in her backyard. And that was like totally normal, like they use it for like wounds and tea and something like that, like it was totally fine. And then we had this things, like to detox your body. And if you had some wounds, you would use like iodine or like some leaves or some other stuff, like pretty natural things. It was not something really, like used in my family to use like traditional medicine, like pharma, like medication. And I was always curious, like about natural treatments, herbs. I tried so many different diets, like I pretty much tried everything. And I had the same thing, like my dad, he's one of the first and best biohackers that I know, because he's always like, he has a health problem and he starts to read, and then he comes up with this crazy things, like the first time I heard about alkaline water and this kind of like what like the alkalinization of the blood does to our health, it was from him. And and it was like, you're crazy, like you don't know what you're talking about. And then like I started working in this field and I was like, oh, there's actually research on this. He was not that crazy. And yeah, I actually learned that from him and from my whole family.
You really have profound knowledge since the beginning. You're like a true biohacker. You already opened it up pretty much, the biohacking, but let's dive a little bit deeper in biohacking, because I realized now more what is biohacking since I've been interviewing people and getting to know. I don't know if I can consider myself as a biohacker, but maybe I am a bit. The stuff I do, breathing things and nutrition, whatever. But what's involved in biohacking? Because not all the listeners really know what biohacker or biohacking is all about.
Yeah, so biohacking is, as the word says, is to hack your own biology. And it has to do mainly with the fact that we don't live in our natural environment because we are not used to the lights of the city. We're not used to the pollution. We are not used to like non-ionizing radiation, for example, coming from like our phones and Wi-Fi, and we are not used to processed food with so many chemicals in it. So basically what we are doing with biohacking is kind of like adapt our bodies that live in this unnatural environment to be like more healthy in a natural way. So we are not kind of like, instead of covering a problem or a symptom with a pill, like, okay, so I have a headache, so I take an aspirin, right? And then the headache goes away. So instead of doing that, what we're saying is like, okay, so like, why do you have a headache? Is this because you are not properly hydrated? Is this because you are not having the proper amount of sleep? Is this because you have inflammation in your body because of the food that you eat? And then it all goes back to our lifestyle, like the way that we live and even like our environment. So there is so much to do, and it will be great to just like go and live in the countryside and not have contact with any of this technologies, pollution, chemicals. But we live in, like most of us, we live in big cities. And even though those people who live in the countryside, they are still in contact with all this unnatural world. So this is basically a very long explanation of what biohacking is.
That's a very good explanation. Thank you for that. Could you have some tips? Of course, we all are individuals, but if somebody wants to start with something, to biohack him or herself, what can she or he do at the beginning?
Well, the first question would be, what do you want to change? Usually it's something that bothers you. It can be like like an illness or something. Yeah, you're not feeling good. Maybe you have low energy, or maybe you wake up and you don't feel energized. Maybe you are having a hard time to focus, or maybe like your digestion is not great, or you're having a hard time losing weight or gaining weight, depending on the situation. So that would be like the first starting point, like identifying the problem. So like what we actually want to optimize. So from that point, one of the things that is really good to do is to get some information about what could be the probable causes. And many times we already know that answer because our bodies have that intuition. And if you kind of like feel that something is not good for you, it might be, I don't know, the environment where you live or where you sleep, or maybe like the food that you're eating, or maybe even your job, that it's stressing you and you're not being able to relax in the evening when you go to sleep. So you can just follow your intuition and start to adapt your lifestyle and maybe remove those particular stressors in your life. If you maybe you're not so in tune with your intuition, what you can do is start reading like about the possible causes. And like there are like so many trustful websites. Like, for example, I used to work as a chief science editor for selfhack.com. It's a company based in the US that shares a lot of content that is scientifically based on science, but written for a lay audience. So you can start reading a little bit about your symptoms and the possible causes, and then see which of those resonate with you. So kind of like, okay, maybe there are like, I don't know, 5 main causes, but only one of the 4 actually is something that you are doing in your everyday life, right? And then it's kind of like experimenting with yourself. Okay, so like, what if I remove, for example, the specific food from my diet? Let's say, for example, let's take an example. Let's say gluten, right? So like, maybe you don't have the celiac disease, but maybe you're a little bit intolerant, and maybe that's causing inflammation and that's lowering your energy. So you remove gluten and you see how you feel. Is it better for you? Do you feel more energized or not? Because our bodies have that wisdom. And I think that's the best piece of advice that I can give. Like, listen to your body.
It seems like actually many of us are biohackers doing it without actually even knowing it, being honest.
I totally agree.
How important it is to actually really listen to yourself, your body, your feelings when you do this biohacking. Of course, like you said, for the beginning, maybe you need some advices, you find some knowledge, but then when you start experimenting, is it better to listen to yourself than the others?
Always first listen to yourself. And actually, this is something that I learned during my yoga teacher training in India. And I had this guru master who like has been a yoga teacher for like, I don't know, like 100 years or so. And he's like, all his teachings were amazing, but always he started every class by saying, listen to your body first, and then listen to me. Because your body, even if he tells you to do, like to put your leg up or whatever pose that he wants you to do, if it doesn't feel right for your body, you should listen to your body first. And with things like biohacking, that's totally essential. Like, what is good for you. You can have like 100 professionals telling you should do this or you should do that. But when you try it, the important thing, and this is kind of like a caveat in this whole discussion, is sometimes we mix our body with our mind. So, for example, you might feel this, for example, cravings for sugar or for like bread or pasta or pizza or like this junk food, because your mind is kind of like addicted to this processed and very like sugary and fatty products. So your mind is telling you, you need this. And if you don't eat it, I will make you feel bad. So you will feel it in your body. You will feel the cravings. You will feel the low energy, right? But then what happens when you actually remove that from your diet, from your everyday lifestyle? You start to realize that it actually like you feel more relaxed, you feel more calmed, you are more focused, you have more energy. So that's the little bit of a difference when we have this, like this chatty mind in our heads that is telling you, go eat that piece of cake, have that cigarette, or like, take that, like glass of beer or whatever, like it can be anything. And for different people, it's different things. But in the end, like we need to kind of like shut this part of our chatty mind, like this monkey mind, and actually listen to the in the intention that we were talking about. We know what feels good for us, because when you have that piece of cake, like half an hour later, you don't feel so good. And I'm pretty much sure that everyone experienced this at some point of their lives.
Do you ever bump into these cravings yourself anymore? Or have you passed that?
All the time. I will not lie here. Like all the time, like it's really hard. It's not an easy thing, but I know I know what is good for me, and I know how to go back to this healthy place. So sometimes it's just more about like willpower of actually, as I said, kind of like shutting up this monkey mind and thinking about like not what's good for you now, but what will be good for you for me in the future. But it's something that I really struggle with still.
Is your mind your tool then, or do you have other tools how you cope with the situation?
Well, I have some things that I know that help me. So, for example, running and listening to music. And if there is a mix of those two things together, it's even better. I know like that clears my mind. I also know that meditation helps a lot. I see a big difference, like the days that I do meditate in the morning and the days that I don't. I have a completely different mindset. I can control myself much easier if I've meditated. And also like if I know that I've been kind of like out of track for some time, and I kind of like recognize, okay, maybe like I'm okay like the first half of the day, but the second half of the day I feel like there's cravings and I feel like that my willpower is a little bit weaker. Then I kind of like what I do is like I try to meditate in the middle of the day, so kind of like I push that reset button and it's kind of like easier. It's not like the magic solution, and probably for different people is different things. But yeah, for me, those work pretty good.
For me, definitely breathing is one key element. Is it important to sort of forgive yourself? I don't think that's a correct word for that, because forgiving, there's nothing wrong what we do actually, but just, be an observer occasionally, like even though you go back to your old habits, you eat that cake, you take one beer, but then don't be too cruel to yourself. Just let it go and just keep on going. What do you think?
I think it's super important. It's super important because, and actually, if you talk to most of like the top biohackers, they all do that. They kind of like, even like I heard the term flexitarian, which is kind of like really allowing yourself to be flexible. And there is this also like, there's this concept of metabolic flexibility, which is like a lot of people who are on the keto diet, and the keto diet is amazing and it changed my life. But if you stick to the keto diet for like a really long time, then you are not flexible anymore. Like every little, like carb that appears somewhere is kind of like a threat to your health. So then it's kind of like, okay, I do this kind of like, like the 80-20 rule, like, so like most of the time I do what is good for me. And when I don't, it's like, as you said, kind of like forgive ourselves and say like, yeah, we don't do everything right or perfectly fine the whole time because we're humans. And yeah, I like that concept of forgiving ourselves. It's really important.
You pretty much already mentioned about it, and you scratched the surface of kind of like over biohacking, because there are a lot of gadgets nowadays and people are measuring themselves, and we have these rings. I see you have one as well, right? Yeah. And Oura rings, and we have watches, and we have all kind of band-aids to measure our brain. And so can we get trapped on biohacking? Can we over biohack ourselves and, just start measuring and actually messing up the whole system because of that?
Yeah, and actually, like a lot of people who are not familiar with biohacking, that's their first kind of like criticism and point of discussion. And I actually think, like, for example, let's take for example the Oura ring. So it could happen that we get trapped, but the right way of using these devices is to learn to listen to your body. And we always go back to the same thing. So you kind of like use the ring to check, okay, where I'm at, and then you're, okay, how do I feel today? I feel good. Do I feel recovered? Do I feel that I had the right amount of sleep and that I'm ready to take on like this day? And then you check with the app and you're like, okay, yeah, it was pretty much aligned with my intuition. And after some time, you don't really need it. We kind of like keep using it so we can check it from time to time. But I think it's kind of like it's like a tool to synchronize our minds with our intuition. And after that, we learn to do it ourselves. Like it's the same thing happens with the meditation apps. So like maybe you need to start with an app because you've never meditated in your whole life, right? But then like after some time, when you see the benefits, when you've done it like every day for like 30 days, 60 days, like a couple months, and then you already know how it looks like, how it's supposed to be, how you feel. So you don't really need the app, and you don't need to sit in a cross-legged position to meditate. You can meditate on a bus, you can meditate on a plane. So this kind of things, I think it's important to use the devices wisely, and also like not to be like over consumers, kind of like, okay, like what's the most like recent release or device, like everyone has it, so then I need to have it. It's kind of like going back to your other question, like how people start with biohacking. It's so I have this issue. Let's say for example, sleep. Okay, then if you have an issue with sleep, then maybe it's worth it to invest in an Oura ring. But maybe you don't need to invest in, I don't know, like neurofeedback equipment or some other things that are not related to that, right? And same with diets and supplements. I'm also, for example, not a fan of dietary supplements, because I believe that if you can find it in your food, you don't need to take it in a powder or pill or whatever form, right? And sometimes that's not possible, but if it's possible, I think it's always better to, like take it from nature.
Yeah, I think the measuring rack, this Oura ring, is good. It's good to get some information, but I still kind of see a little trap there as well, because of course it gives you feedback, but let's say for me, for example, occasionally I've felt really good in the morning and really energized, and then you check your stats and like, oh, what the hell is this? I'm not recovered, I didn't sleep good, and you feel energized and you feel really good. So then I think we come to this point that also trust yourself, trust your feelings, because it might happen like, oh, I feel great, and then you check the schedule, I didn't sleep good, I feel tired. And then you kind of start feeding that to yourself, and I'm tired and this day is going to be crap. Just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I see your point. Yeah, I totally agree. Like it's again the same thing. Listen to your body first. Doesn't matter what like other people, like internet or the Oura ring says. Listen to yourself first.
I think we are already pretty much talking about it, but your good topics, the topics you like to talk about, is health optimization. Well, we are doing it right now already when talking about biohacking, but what about your own health optimization? What do you do to optimize your own health?
So I think like sleep for me is one of the main priorities, and I know how to, let's say, like hack my sleep or optimize my sleep. Again, it doesn't mean that I always do it, but I know like if I really need it, I know how to go there. Like for example, for me, having a late meal is really bad for my sleep. And also like if I drink any alcohol in the evening, that's also like that messes up with my sleep. And for example, like being on my phone or my computer late, also same thing. So like I have this blue blocking glasses and all this. I'm kind of like taking advantage of those technologies to optimize my sleep. Then, for example, the keto diet was a life-changing thing for me. Again, like I did it quite almost like strictly for a long time. I think like a year, almost like a year and a half. And now I'm a little bit more flexible. And I know, like, when I reintroduce some foods in my diet, I know which ones are really bad for me. Like, for example, if I have a pizza or if I have that piece of cake, I know how I will feel afterwards. And it's my decision whether I want to go there or not. And then, like, there are like other things that are still not part of the keto diet that I know that they are pretty good for me, you know, like, or at least like I don't feel bad. So that's something else. What else I do? Well, the yoga, of course, and the meditation are also part of my health optimization. And what else? I also use like, but these are more like on a need basis. Like I use a lot of medicinal herbs and mushrooms when I need them. So like, for example, I use lion's mane for focus when I need to, you know, like to work a lot, like when I have a pretty busy day. I use some herbs and plants like I use chaga mushroom and echinacea for to boost my immunity when I feel that I'm about to get a cold. Like those are really, really helpful for me. What else? Yeah, I don't know. Like I do a lot of research. Like every time that I have something, it's like I can tell you a story. For example, when I was in Bali, I had this very bad viral infection in my ear, around my ear. So like it's the same as the herpes virus, but here is pretty bad because if you don't treat it, it can actually, you know, like damage your eye nerves and you can lose your eyesight. So I went to this doctor and she wanted to give me like this antiviral drugs, and I didn't want to take any drugs. Then I was like, okay, I know that my body can deal with this. So how can I help my body? So I did everything that I could to boost my immunity, you know, like every green stuff that would be helpful, a lot of chaga, a lot of like different herbs. And yeah, and it was totally fine, you know, like because at the end of the day, our bodies are able to fix anything from infections to cancer. You know, like our bodies are able to fight it. We are made for this. But the important thing is like what's our mindset, how we take care of our health, how we help our immunity, you know, like the amount of stress that we have, our habits, so many things, you know.
I agree on this 100%. When was the last time you were sick?
Well, I had a flu this last weekend.
Okay.
I've been traveling a lot, and I don't know where I got sick. And I have this kind of like, again, intuition, you know, like knowing my body. So I need 1 day of recovery, nothing else. Like I don't need any medicine. I need to stay 1 day at home, drink a lot of like tea, herbs, whatever is available, and just rest. And after 24 hours, I'm totally fine. Like in the past 2 or 3 years, all the, you know, like flus or this kind of like every time that I've been sick, you know, like that I had a fever or something, like that was the same outcome. 1 day in bed, fully recover the next day.
Well, 24 hours is fair enough.
Yeah. That's what I need. It doesn't matter, like, you know, like if I can take those 24 hours or not, but like I need to take them, like otherwise my body doesn't work properly. So
how do you help others to optimize their health?
Great question. So I do a little bit of sharing like on social media and writing posts and stuff, but the main thing I would say that I've been doing so far is helping the people who reach out to me, and they're mainly like friends and family. Mm-hmm. And people always ask me like, hey, I have this situation, what should I do? Because I'm a biochemist, they also like ask a lot about their lab tests. So there's like, oh, like I have low vitamin D, I have high, I don't know, like blood glucose or something like that. And then they're like, okay, what should I do? And one of the last examples that I'm super proud of, my dad, this famous biohacker, he was diagnosed with diabetes last year. His blood sugar was off the roof. And of course, like he went to the doctor gave him like a lot of medicine. And as soon as he told me, and I was actually traveling at that time, so like I wasn't back home. I told him like, okay, you will follow my instructions. You will do everything that I say. And he's super disciplined. So like I put him on the keto diet among like other things, but mainly like it was keto. He was measuring his blood sugar and his weight like every day. And after 6 months, he normalized his blood sugar. He went off the medication that he was taking for blood sugar and also other medications that he was taking for pain and for blood pressure. And he lost 13 kilos. So also like what happened is that after he lost all this weight, he started feeling more energized and he was like, okay, maybe I will go for a run. Maybe I do some sports. And he's feeling like so good about himself because he made that happen for himself. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about biohacking and health optimization, that you are empowered with your own health. It's not that so like, okay, the doctor will fix my health. You are the one who is fixing your health and making it better or worse, basically.
Yeah. I myself work in on the healthcare field as a physiotherapist and now as a breathwork worker as well. But we're talking about as a physiotherapist in a private hospital chain, and I see that, well, doctors and nurses and physiotherapists, that they actually don't feel very good themselves. So how important do you think it's actually fix yourself first in order to be able to help others?
Well, I think it's important. It's definitely important, but I think we are talking about different types of health, like when we're talking about that, because healthcare professionals, they are used to this, well, we call it traditional medicine. It has nothing of traditional. It's like modern medicine, right? So they're doing your lab tests, they're doing like a control, and then like they're giving you medicine and go home, right? They're kind of like fixing you, or they're helping you with your symptoms. And what we're talking about, like this more like health empowerment, if they were able, like if healthcare professionals were able to take care of themselves that way, they have the responsibility, and they also have this, how do you say it? Kind of like the patients trust in their word. So if you tell them like, you need to take an aspirin, the patient will take an aspirin. But if instead of telling them you need to take an aspirin, you tell them like, okay, so like, how is your sleep? How are your stress levels? What are you eating? And you help them, to empower themselves, then they will also trust that. So I think it's our responsibility. Like in my case, it's like as a scientist and a biochemist, and like I think that all healthcare professionals, I don't really know like about physiotherapy, because it's actually, I see physiotherapy more kind of like on the side of biohacking more than on the side of like modern medicine, because, like for me, so many times it happened that, for example, I like from time to time, I have very strong headaches, and I wish I could like just call a physiotherapist to help me with that instead of like taking an aspirin, but the thing is kind of like the healthcare system doesn't work that way. So yeah. That's kind of like one of my dreams, to have this ER with massage therapists, physiotherapists, biohackers, like and people who will actually help you to optimize your health.
I think it will eventually happen. That's I feel that, because there are so many scientists out there, as you are there as well. There, Bruce Lipton is one good example. Dr. Joe Dispenza, who are writing books. It's out there already in the scientific-based, evidence-based field as well. So I think the healthcare system will notice it at some point as well. Hopefully, at least.
Yeah.
Well, I said the word.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, I said the word science already. You kind of dropped the scientist out of you, but you actually did not, and you like to spread the science still all over the world. So you actually share scientific knowledge. What are your favorite topics or aspects of sharing the scientific knowledge to people?
So one is mainly like everything that we've been talking about has to do with this health empowerment, biohacking, health optimization, whatever you want to call it. It's that thing, it's like actually feeling good, like well-being, healthy lifestyle, right? That's one of my biggest topics that I really enjoy communicating. And the other one of my, I would say, like more recent passions is related to the environment, and these two things are so much connected. Like health and environment cannot be disconnected from the other, because our environment affects our health a lot, and we, with the way that we live and our habits, the way that we eat, the healthcare system, even like different chemicals and hormones and medicines are also affecting the environment. So this is an interchangeable or like bidirectional relationship. And I also became like very passionate in this almost like last year about everything that is happening with the climate and climate change, global warming, and so many, like I've started to read more and understand the causes of climate change, what is research saying about climate change, and also what we can do about it on a everyday basis. And it's so amazing that these two things, that like two topics that I like to work on, they're so much aligned. Because when I, for example, started to, let's say, like take care of the environment by not using, like chemical products, like commercial cosmetics, like soap, shampoo, toothpaste, deodorant, all these things that are bad for the environment, I switched to the natural options, which are also good for my health. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1, right? And if you take, for example, plastic, so like, yeah, you are taking care of the environment if you're not buying like a plastic bottle with water every time that you want to drink, but instead of that, you go with your reusable water bottle and you refill it, right? But on the other hand, the plastics, they also have a lot of toxic components that go into the water, and then you drink it, and then they're bad for your health, right? And even if you go to things like transportation, right? Like we are, by choosing different means of transport, we are polluting less the air that we breathe, and we all breathe it. And it also like impacts our health. So there is like so many connections between these two topics. And like my biggest passion and commitment is to actually understand the science behind these different topics and be able to communicate it to a lay audience, to everyone basically, so that we can all take action, because it's not something that will change with one person. We all need to increase our awareness and really change our habits.
Why is science actually so important?
Because that's the evidence, right? So like, you know that something is happening because you did some research on that, right? So like, I can tell you, like, okay, you shouldn't use plastic. But if I don't explain you the why, if I don't explain you the reasons, like what is plastic doing to your health, what is plastic doing to the environment, that comes from research, that comes from science, you probably won't feel, like empowered enough to really take action, right? We don't do things just because. We do things because we believe in those things. And I think that awareness and that belief comes from having the knowledge about it. And people, hopefully, I hope they still trust science, because there is so much that has been done already. And I've been there. I've been at the bench myself, but I feel that I can do more outside the lab than actually inside the lab, because there are like so many great scientists already doing the work in the lab, that I think that, like, for me, it's kind of like my commitment is to bring that to the people.
So how do people find you? How do people find you and your knowledge? Now you can promote yourself a bit here.
Well, I'm in all social media, so like you can just find me with my complicated name that you pronounce like super well, but most of the people cannot even pronounce it. So yeah, I have the disadvantage that I have a very difficult name. But if you Google me, you will find everything about me. So there is not much I can hide, because there is only one, I think, with that name. So I have my website where I share content. I write some posts for my website and for other websites. And you can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, depending on the type of connection that people want to have with me. Maybe you can add the links to my social media or to the website.
I will for sure. Yeah, I will for sure tag you and put all the links when I release this conversation. That is 100%. It's promise. That's the right word.
Yeah, and I would definitely encourage people to connect with me, because I love like answering questions, helping if I can, connecting with people. So if you're listening, please connect with me and reach out.
Let's talk about a little bit more about climate change. You pretty much told the reason why you're into climate change at the moment. But is the big deal out of climate change really that it affects us and our health, or is there something else?
Well, there are many things. It is already affecting us and our health, as you said. Like, for example, as I mentioned, like the air that we breathe today, like 90% of the worldwide population, they breathe toxic air, especially those who live in the cities or like around industrial areas. And this pollution, it actually goes inside our bodies, and it can not only cause inflammation in the lungs, but also like in other parts of the body, like the brain, the liver, like even problems with like reproduction, pregnancy, many different issues. So that's something that is already there. We've also seen the like environmental catastrophes that are happening, like the floods and the hurricanes, and that's happening. The ice, like the continental ice is melting, like in Antarctica, Arctic, Greenland, like so many of those situations also happening, and that's actually raising the level of the water, causing like floods in the coast areas. So this produces also like refugees because of the climate crisis. And it also affects, like, for example, plastic. Do you know where plastic goes after we throw that little cute bottle in the trash?
Well, tell me about it. Not sure.
It actually goes to it goes to the seas. And what happens is that it doesn't fully degrade. So it becomes like very small particles that are around, like they're microscopic particles that you don't see them, but they end up in all our food, like fish, all the sea products, sea salt, water, even the water that we use to like wash our fruits and vegetables. So it basically ends up in our food and we end up eating it. So it goes inside our bodies. And that also creates a lot of inflammation and a lot of damage to our health. And it's estimated that with the amount of these microplastics that are in the environment already today, we are eating the amount equivalent to a credit card per week.
Wow, that's a lot. A lot
wow,
of plastic.
Pretty impressive, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of plastic. Did you enjoy your last credit card? Was it tasty?
Well, yeah. If I check my bank account, it doesn't look very good though. But it's a huge topic, and I was talking to one former professional surfer, Kalle Carranza, and this topic was really close to his heart. Sadly we lost the connection in our conversation, so he would dive deeper into the plastic scene as well. But he also told me stuff like you did at the moment. I don't know what happens, but I think in Finland, actually here in Helsinki, they burn all the plastic. I don't know what's the effect of that in a really, really, really high, I don't know, temperature. I guess it goes somewhere still.
Where does that go?
Yeah. Up and then it goes back
to
down.
The air.
Yeah. And then back to the seas.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And what it's causing, like all these pollutants in the atmosphere are causing this global warming. So that's causing the increase of the temperature on Earth and everything that we already talked about. So yeah, it's about being conscious, like what are we doing and where everything, like what are the consequences of everything that we do? You know, like every time that you buy, let's say, for example, a toothpaste, right? You have like the plastic container, you have all like the chemicals inside, you have micro plastic inside because of the kind of like, you know, this kind of like microspheres that are inside of some toothpaste. So, and you use that maybe for what? A month, if it's like a big one, and then you just throw it away, right? And then the next month you buy another one. So the same with the plastic bottles, the same like with so many things. So like if we're not conscious about it, we are just making it worse and worse. So like every single decision that we make, we are either contributing to the problem or the solution. There is like no like neutral position. You know, like if you choose plastic, you're making it worse for yourself, the environment, future generations. And if you make a more conscious choice, you're actually contributing to living in a healthier and better planet for all of us.
Give me and the listeners some examples how to go around this plastic, because everything is really double, triple packed, and everything is in plastic, on plastic, around plastic. So what can we do to reduce using plastic?
Yeah, well, I think like some countries are already implementing very strict policies around this, but it starts like with the basics, like for example, the plastic bags at the supermarket, like at least for example in Argentina, they are banned already. So you need to go with your reusable bag to the supermarket. That's one thing, super important. So like every time that you go do any shopping, doesn't matter what it is, supermarket, you know, like fruits and veggies, or just, I don't know, whatever you need, go with your bag. Then, for example, for plastic bottles, have a reusable bottle, and you can use it not only for water, but also like if you want to go and thermal mugs for coffee, tea, even soup, like the hot drinks. Switching to natural products, that's also like a great option. Many of these natural products, they actually don't come in packages. They either come in glass containers, or they are, for example, there are a lot of solid shampoos and soap. Well, soap, it's mainly solid. Shampoo, conditioner, even like lotion. It comes within a solid cube. It's kind of like a soap, but you just use it for your hair. Same with deodorant, toothpaste. There are like so many natural options. Toothbrush, all the women's hygiene products. Also, they have their reusable options. Kind of like going back to earlier times where we didn't have that. Even diapers.
Yeah.
You know, like diapers is one of the things that pollutes the environment a lot. So there are like so many things that you can do, even like choosing a different way of transportation. I guess like the situation in Finland must be much, much better than in other parts of the planet. You know, like even like in Argentina, for us, it's kind of like, it's still kind of like we have to make an effort to switch, for example, to using the bike or walking, or, you know, like implementing other means of transport that are, for example, electric and not based on fossil fuels. So I think we need this change of mindset, you know, like just think about our lifestyle and our life in this planet in a more conscious way. So kind of like how we can leave the less or the smallest footprint when we leave.
So there really are good options that you can make a decision on. What about the bioplastic bags? Are they a hoax then? Is it just something that disturbs us and we think it's something good? Or do you know more about the bioplastic bags, for example?
Yeah, I know that there are like already there have been some developments. So they do them with different materials that they actually degrade in about like 30 days. Because like for you to have an idea, like a plastic bag, it takes around, I think it was like around 10 years to degrade, and plastic bottles around 100 years. So this bio bags and biomaterials, they usually degrade in about 30 days. And some of them, they just kind of like deintegrate in, like if you put them in water, it's like, I think like warm water or something like that. So it's actually an option, but I think it still need to be implemented, you know, because it's probably more expensive, you know, like people need to get used to it. They need to know where to buy it, and just become it like make it kind of like a part of our lives.
Yeah, we have those bags here all around in the stores, those like bioplastic bags. So that's why I asked. Well,
it's better not to use any bag. To have your reusable, you know, like,
for sure,
it's better, but it's also an option.
Let's stay in the climate change, and you have some kind of project going on here when talking about climate change, Homeward Bound project. I want to know more about that. Please tell me.
Well, the Homeward Bound project is a global leadership initiative for women in science to fight climate change. So basically, their goal is to create in 10 years. So like this project started in 2016. So in 10 years, they want to create a network of 1,000 women from all over the world who are scientists and who will be leaders in the topic of climate change, because we need to change our global paradigms around how we solve problems in general, and specifically about climate change, because it has to do with protecting our planet, protecting our home, which is something that we as women kind of like do. We have this intuition or instinct to protect our home, our families. And the idea is that with this global initiative, we will be able to change the dialogues and the discussions and the paradigms and the problem solving around this big issue that is climate change. Because the thing with climate change is that we cannot wait any longer to make a change in our lifestyle. So like if we keep living like this for a few years more, then it will be irreversible. There will be no way back. So we need to make this change now. So Homeward Bound, what it's doing is they're equipping us with these tools to really be able to make a difference. And one of these powerful tools is for us to be in this extreme environment as is Antarctica, because Antarctica is super fragile to climate change. So we will go there for 3 weeks on a ship with 100 women of these women scientists, and we will be trained every day, pushed definitely outside of our comfort zones, and this will be like the most outside of my comfort zone that I have been ever, to really be like problem solvers and leaders. So like the aim is that when we go back from Antarctica, we really feel the urgency to make that difference.
Are you afraid to push your limits at all, or are you more excited?
Both, actually. I am a little bit afraid. Like I suffer a lot from seasickness, and here we are talking about like huge ships that actually like jump on 12-meter waves. So it's not that I'm super fancy of going through that experience, but I know that it will be worth it. You know, like I know that it will make a huge change in my life. And I already feel that calling and that connection with this project, because it was actually, this is the first time in my life that I feel kind of like sensitive, like emotional and vulnerable when I hear about everything that is happening, when I talk to people, you know, like every time that I read the news and I see what's going on and what we are doing as humanity to destroy this planet, it makes me like really emotional, you know. It makes me feel sad, as if someone was destroying something that is mine, you know, like someone who is dear to me or something that is really close to my heart. And I feel this will be a super powerful experience, and it's worth it. The cold, the seasickness, being outside of my comfort zone, being away from home and disconnected for 3 weeks, I think it's totally worth it.
Are these emotions you feel, are they your driver to fight for this cause of climate change?
Yeah, actually, I started to fight even before starting to feel this emotional connection. It actually came with the more I know, the more connected I feel. So like at first it was just like, okay, climate change, less plastic, less, you know, meat, less, you know, like traveling by car. And then like when you know more, you kind of like, you feel that connection like more closely. I think that was it more for me.
That's beautiful. I really admire people like you who really are making a change in the world, not just pretending to make a change, but really deeply from the heart are making a difference. And it's been a great honor to talk to you about these topics. And I really enjoyed this because there are a lot of things that I really didn't know. And I was really curious and excited to meet you online like this. So thank you very much for participating to
Thank
Surfer of
you.
Life. I have a couple of more questions still I'd like to ask from you. I think it came out already a little bit there that you become emotional, because thinking like, what do you think about people when you see people out there throwing trash on the ground and not actually giving the F word about our environment? What are your reactions to that?
Well, I can tell you something that I did recently, and it's not something that I used to do in the past, which is I do my best not to judge them, but I try to lead by example. So the other day, I saw a man who was like, he just threw like a plastic cup on the street, and he actually like, it was like on purpose because he threw it and then he kind of like pushed it with his foot. And for me, like, instead of saying anything to him, I just picked it inside, like in front of him, and put it in the trash. That's a very small action that at least will make him think about it. Maybe he will do that 100 more times, but I will not be giving him a speech about how he should behave. I think I would rather show him, and then he will draw like his own conclusions.
I really like this. Leading with an example and not judging people, and understanding even though if they don't do the right thing for our environment. Is helping others and saving our planet and doing good things, it really demands a lot of energy. We are dealing with energies in all fields in life. So it demands a lot of energy. How do you save energy for yourself? Because you're traveling a lot, you're making a difference, you are pretty much all over the place, but I know you need energy for yourself as well. What are your best tools for that?
Well, I can say that it's not easy. So sometimes I get myself like to get too involved, or maybe like I'm overworking or overdoing things, and sometimes I collapse. I had this some days during this past month that have like been super intense. But what I do, for example, I don't economize my sleep at all. If I need to sleep like 8-9 hours a day, I do it, because I know that will actually give me the energy that I need to face that day. Also, like, I think like human connection is really good for me. Like, just when I'm super, and I had this situation, for example, when I was super overwhelmed with everything that was happening, it was just like, if I have someone next to me, that's great. But if not, I just pick up my phone and call a friend and say like, hey, do you have a minute? I really need to talk. And when we start talking, maybe just after a couple of minutes, I already start feeling, that warmness, that connection, and I already start feeling more relaxed. And the other thing, well, I already mentioned that meditation is really good, and it's kind of like a game changer for me. But you also mentioned breathing. And that's also something that when I'm super overwhelmed and I'm not even able to sit and meditate or do anything or any like right judgment, I also sit, preferably in the sun if I can, and I just breathe. Like as long as I need it until I feel calm, because sometimes I just feel that overwhelmed state, even like in my body. So like I feel like my heart beating, like I really don't feel well. And then I just sit and breathe. And when I'm ready, I keep going with my day. Doesn't matter how long that takes. It might take like 3 minutes. It might take like 30 minutes.
I like that vulnerability as well, that even though you seem like a strong woman and you're really fighting for the cause, but eventually at some point we all need help from each other, and we are all in this together, and all the energy exchange and everything is like we're really involved. Do you believe on the power of change?
My first answer will be yes, but what do you mean exactly?
Do you believe that the change is possible in a bigger aspect in the world?
Yes, I do. I do. But I do think that we need to change our mindsets. Like it's not thinking, it's starting small if we want to think big. It's like starting with each person. You know, like for me in this last years of my life, whether it was like related to health or environment, like I've seen results when I took the time to talk to someone one-on-one and really kind of like explain whatever is like a health topic or environmental topic. And then they start to connect with it. And when they feel it and they become more aware, they already make the change. And they can also like expand that knowledge. So like they can share with others, right? But I think that's the kind of like, you know, like an ant work where you kind of like go in like small steps, and eventually it will grow, right? But I don't know if it's because I'm surrounded with so many like-minded people, but I do feel that the change is already happening. It's just a matter of time.
What makes you feel down?
It's kind of like sometimes I'm able to recognize it, but sometimes not. But it's when I feel that people make things on purpose. Like, for example, if we talk about the planet, it's that some people have interests and they're making things on purpose. If we're thinking about health and pharma industry, thinking that there is like this big monster behind that is doing things on purpose, or not thinking about others and actually only about themselves, right? And that also, like, it's the same in a personal level, right? If I have a conflict with someone, you know, like with a close person in my life, then when I feel that they are just being selfish and thinking about themselves and not about the other person, that really makes me feel, down or sad.
On the contrary,
kind of like, I think no, I just wanted to add, it's kind of like, in one word, is kind of like people with bad intentions. I think that's,
I hear you. Well, on the contrary, what makes you happy?
I think the thing that makes me happier is when I've inspired someone to make a change. You know, and I've been fortunate enough to have people reaching out to me and saying, like, you've been such a great inspiration in my life, whether it's related to health, environment, my career as a science communicator, which has been kind of like a career inspiration for many scientists out there. And even if in my personal life, like in terms like this, what we were talking about, stepping outside of my comfort zone and really taking challenges. And every time that someone tells me that I inspired them, I just feel like this, like a lot of love growing inside of me, and it's just feels amazing.
Thank you so much, Evgenia. And hope to see you in
Tommy.
Finland soon. Maybe in the Biohacker Summit or somewhere else.
Maybe. Yeah. And you owe me the acroyoga, or I owe you the acroyoga.
Yeah, definitely.
So I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much for this invitation. It has been great. Yeah.